Let's now go back to our case study. For this game theory as applied to pricing part of the course, we'll stick to customer type B2B, business model occupancy management, sub-customer type hospitality establishments. Now, consider that you're running your platform for a hotel chain that has a tiered offering. That is, they have hotel brands targeted at different income groups, from budget hotels to super luxury hotels at different regions and locations around the world. You are running your property management automations platform for this hotel chain, and you are also running in room automations for guests in order to drive stickiness and loyalty on the part of the guests to this hotel chain. However, unlike in the case of the student accommodation we discussed in the revenue assurance demonstrations, the hotel is not charging guests for these automations. It's a value add they use to drive stickiness with their guests. Your main focus here as the platform owner is driving and managing occupancy rates for the hotel chain around the world, with the ultimate goal of ensuring they reach the highest levels of occupancy they can for all of the chain's hotels across locations, hotel types, room types, and associated pricing tiers. For this activity of driving, managing, and optimizing occupancy rates, we'll stick to using pricing strategy as a lever, competitively and otherwise. Your platform can pull area data about price versus demand patterns at any given location at any given time and adjust the pricing to attract more guests and optimize length of stay across the chain, using guest experience as an input to this process. We'll come back to this shortly. It also uses historical data to identify the type of guests that frequent the chain's hotels for any given period and can predict length of stay, optimal pricing, optimal perks via value options, and so on. Now, unlike in the case study of our venture creation course that we discussed in the previous part of this chapter, part 7, you don't have the benefit of manually mapping out individual pricing strategy for each hotel in each location, from the general profile of guests in terms of whether they are business travelers, leisure travelers, or activity chasing travelers, the type of season for each period of the year and what type of traveler prefers it, and so on. That was in 2019. Now it's 2024. You have to be able to autonomously generate these maps for each hotel in the chain's portfolio in terms of its location dynamics, guest profiles, and so on across the multiple regions and locations, as well as pricing and value tiers across all these hotels in the chain as a start, with the objective of eventually being able to do so at an individual guest level. You're smart. You knew this, and as such, that's what you've done for your platform. Now, we have a new challenge to tackle, so we go back to our decision process so it can guide us through setting up our game theory model, pricing wise, to solve the challenge that we can always come back to and re strategize, depending on whether our data KPIs are yielding positive or negative outcomes. Our challenge in this context is that demand patterns do not line up with occupancy patterns across the portfolio of hotels in different regions. It would appear that in some instances and regions, we're losing out on capitalizing on demand spurts, and in some regions, we're getting higher than expected occupancy for the level of demand. And that is not necessarily positive, considering how we've set up our value options and how we expect guests of particular profile types, needs, and spend to perceive the hotel chain's brand with the ultimate objective of stickiness and loyalty. So while external data depicts normal seasonal patterns expected as per your data collected in predictive analytics model, your internal booking and guest profiling data and insights tell you that you are attracting the right guests to a wrong tier, either room or hotel wise. You've identified that guests that should rather be booking your higher tier hotels are actually making bookings at lower tier hotels, leading to loss of opportunity to model the right value options for them. Here's an example. A couple with a highish income profile might have decided to do a quick weekend away to celebrate their 4-year-old son winning a Lego competition. They live inland and the son so loves the ocean. So they took out their calculators and came up with a budget that would allow them to reward their cute little itty bitty future architect with a weekend of splish splashing in the loud big bathtub with dancing water. and still be within their yearly budget to not only stay on track, but also be able to take that big year end holiday overseas at the end of the year. They go online and search for rooms within their budget, and they book the option they perceive to best meet their needs at a budget that makes sense for them. They figure this is a quick weekend trip, so they don't want to get overly elaborate with the planning. As long as their future architect gets to enjoy his reward and they have a decent place with decent breakfast to retire to at the end of the day. Here's the thing, if they stayed at the right tier hotel in terms of their earning and spending profile, you'd be able to demonstrate via value options and the general guest experience at the higher tier hotel that this is a great hotel type for their type of needs, and they would think of it every time they are looking for a hotel. It might be that the couple goes to the same old restaurant they met at for the same old food every year for their anniversary. Next time, they might think a quick in and out at the coast might be worthwhile because of what they experienced the last time they stayed at this hotel. So you are losing out on impressing them, from the view from the breakfast restaurant to the gorgeous guest pool for the late afternoons with the kids, or the humongous warm jacuzzi for the adults with an infinity pool that spills into the ocean for those romantic late nights for mom and dad while the kids snooze. Smart parents know to leave a gap between the older kid and the younger ones so that once or twice a year the older one can check on the younger ones when mom and dad sneak out for a midnight champagne and jacuzzi session during their annual vacations. The low tier hotels are not bad at all, but they sure don't have an infinity pool and an incredible view to entice stickiness on the part of guests with a somewhat high income and more discerning profile. On the flip side of the coin, guests with a lowish income and spending profile are also taking up low tier rooms in higher end hotels. This is not a good thing because value options in the higher end hotel are modeled for the highish income profile. So, what would typically seem like great value and perks for the highish income individual seem like expensive and unnecessary spending for guests with income and spending profiles on the lowish end. Psychographics wise, higher income individuals tend to focus more on value rather than price. Let's say there's a currency called the meow. A higher income individual looking for at least 5 gummy chihuahuas would rather spend 11 meows on a pack of 15 gummy chihuahuas rather than spend 5 meows on 5 gummy chihuahuas at 1 meow each. On the other hand, a lower income customer would typically go for the exact amount they need for as little money as possible. So they would likely go for the 5 chihuahuas for 5 meows at 1 meow each. The value options for the higher tier and lower tier hotels are modeled exactly against these psychographics. So if the profile of the guest is unsuited for the tier of hotel they are staying in, you're in all likelihood not making any progress in your endeavor to drive stickiness with the said guest. You also notice a lopsided occupancy distribution between hotels in the same area, region, or location within the chain, where other hotels are maintaining good occupancy rates, whereas others are barely busy. Yet all of them are in a location with the same amenities and are subject to the same demand patterns. The guest profile distribution also doesn't line up with the occupancy trend in the hotels across tiers and various locations. On analyzing the booking data, you notice that a large number of guests make bookings via partner third party sites, while a smaller percentage makes bookings via the hotel directly via website or phone. Yes, some people still prefer to phone into the hotel to see if they can get a room, especially if they really like the hotel and are already on a loyalty program, which they believe will get them a better room at a better price. A significant percentage of the third party bookings are new guests, while a significant percentage of the direct bookings are returning customers. From a contextual perspective, competition is growing, which has made things a bit difficult because third party booking platforms from which you do the bulk of your new customer acquisition have more partners to make deals and get commissions from, which has somewhat reduced the chain's bargaining power in terms of the trade off between visibility or discoverability and commission rates. The new competitors are coming in hot with their penetrative pricing to gain market share. So, what they lack in brand equity and familiarity, they make up for in hype and price. The older brands are also expanding their tier offerings, competing in categories they never used to with this chain before. They have the brand equity and visibility. They have the third party booking platform relationships that they just extended to include their newer tier offerings. They are competing at a similar price as your chain, essentially just increasing supply in the tier categories they are now newly entering, making customer acquisition harder for your hotel chain. Furthermore, short stay residential rentals are also eating into the pie, increasing supply at similar prices, particularly for large group or family bookings. Wrapping up our context means we've got our challenge or opportunity laid out, depending on the way you want to look at it. We can now set up our game or games so that we can work our way to what payoffs we want, what options we have on the table, as well as what it would take to implement each of the options we have available to arrive at the optimal option to go with. We know that we want to optimize occupancy. We just have to figure out, based on the situational information and the contextual factors we've laid out, what that means from a potential options, outcomes, and payoff perspective.